The views and opinions expressed by the following program are those of the host, guests, and callers and are not necessarily those of this station or Webster Rock Hill Ministries, its management, or other hosts or underwriting sponsors. Programs presented by KWRH-LP are for educational and entertainment purposes only.
Hey, it's the end of the new year, and it's In Tune you're listening to with Arnold Stricker and
Ellie Wharton.
In Tune's a 2-hour weekly broadcast which focuses and reflects on issues that impact and connects our community and the greater St. Louis area. Our topics include the arts, crime, education, employment, faith, finance, food, history, housing, humor, and justice. Today we are going to do a little tribute to Michael Castro, the first poet laureate of St. Louis, who passed away recently. And then we're going to talk about some top news items nationally and locally, and do some history helps. I had called it history highlights. I like history helps because this is like a little help for you, but history also helps you understand how you're living today.
It really does. And what is the saying? The saying says that if you fail to, what is that saying? Read history, or that you're doomed to repeat it.
That's correct.
And boy, aren't we seeing that today as we look at our circumstances nationally? People are up in arms about what they see happening, but this has happened before.
Has happened before, and history is a great thing. It combines literature, it combines mathematics, it combines science, because you get an understanding of why things happened, when they happened, and for what reason they happen.
Yes, and as we look at our economics, and so many of the predictors really are pointing us back to a time when we really had economic downfall in this country. And we're seeing the same signs again, and everybody's kind of like looking like they don't know what to do. Whoa, look what is happening. How is this going? Like, well, folks, look at the past.
Yeah, been down this road before.
And they just want to act like it's the first time.
Well, it's not.
Okay. Could you call Washington and tell them that, please?
I'll pick up the phone after the show, and or maybe during the show.
And during the show, let's see if we can find somebody who might be sitting around the White House feeling lonely.
They'd probably get a recording.
That's right, because nobody's working, right?
No, nobody's there. So Michael Castro, born in 1945 in New York City. He got a delight for the language when he was in elementary school, which a lot of elementary kids hate poetry. He ended up becoming a graduate student in his early 20s and became a professor at University of Missouri St. Louis in Lindenwood, was a founding poet of River Styx, published several poetry books. He said poetry is often an art that involves discovery. You don't always know what the next phrase is going to be or how the next line is going to be resolved. And poetry can be inspirational for younger people, especially in terms of self-worth. And what he did was he really did built a lot of bridges between poets, because there's different kind of groups of poets. There's kind of the traditional group, and then there's those that don't necessarily have to rhyme, and you had a distinction between actually black poetry and street poetry and more quote-unquote refined poetry. And he really did a lot to bridge that.
And then don't forget just spoken word.
Spoken word, right, was very, very big. M.K. Stallings, who we've had on the show, talked about him and said he was teaching poetry in the university level, but he was also living it in the streets.
It was so wonderful that our good friend Chris Mullen, who is the host of Studio 111, was a good friend of his and introduced me to Michael and to his lovely wife, Adelia, even before we started the radio station on air. And he was one of my very first interviews.
Wow.
Yeah, he was fantastic. We went to his home over in U City and just spent several hours with him. And it was a wonderful event. And I was just always grateful to Chris Mullen for being able to share that with me.
Well, and we happen to have Chris on to express a few sentiments about Michael and their friendship. How you doing, Chris?
Hi, I'm fine, Arnold. Hi, Ellie.
Hi, Chris.
What stands out for you in your friendship with Michael Castro as something that you will always remember?
I think that he was the consummate word warrior. I met him, I think the whole group of us who met were in our 20s at the time, and he was already assisting other people in finding a voice through poetry. but he was also into music and dance and all of the other arts. And he found a way to express that through his words. And he helped many other people express.
Do you have a favorite poem or book that he wrote?
I think all of his books are great. He just recently published a new one, but I think that what will live on forever in addition to those books are the creation of the anthologies, the River Styx books. Those expose not only regional artists to regional poets, but he was able to gather poets from all over the world. I don't think that would have been possible without the strength and the vision of Michael. There are poets who I never would have been introduced to. And Michael created a community. Even as a teacher at Lindenwood, he exposed poets to poets. And that's a rare thing. That is a very rare thing.
Why do you think that is?
Because he saw the world as one, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but I will say that he saw words as liberating, educating, uplifting. He also saw that the introspection that it takes to create a poem was so freeing to the poet, even if the person exposed to that particular poem had questions about it. That open dialogue.
I found him to be a really easy person to interview.
Yeah.
I didn't find him to be, and we know that artists can be very eccentric, and he was not that at all. I mean, maybe he was, in his own way, but when we were there at his home, I felt like I had been in his home, dozens of times, and it was the first time that I had been there.
Sure. I think one of the things that Michael gave that is very difficult for a lot of artists to give is time.
Yes.
Because we hoard our time so much. But you could call him and say, hey, I'm having a problem with this line. And he would help guide you to figure out what it is you want to say, not what he wants you to say. And that's, again, a rarity.
Yeah, because he didn't want to claim any fame to somebody else's work. But as I've been reading about him, he was very instrumental in, and as you stated, Chris, in really giving of himself and helping other people discover their own voice, their own words, and how to put them down, and bridging a lot of gaps, not only locally, but nationally and internationally.
Absolutely. About 2 weeks ago, Saturday, Michael attended an event for Shirley LaFleur, the new poet laureate of our area. And I was struck by that event in that there were 3 poets laureate in the room, Michael, Shirley LaFleur, and Eugene Redmond. And there was a lovely photograph taken of the 3 of them. For a lot of people, if you meet one poet laureate in your life, that's amazing. That 3 were in this room together and were all friends was brilliant.
I bet that was a really exceptional moment.
Very much so. Very much.
Because, you always hear about, there's a little competition between musicians and actors and actresses and writers, but that is very unusual.
But I think that really spoke to the universality of Michael, and that, as Chris said, he was inclusive. He saw poetry as a way to, pretty much bridge the divide.
Absolutely.
And as a matter of fact, he even edited a book titled Crossing the Divide.
Right. And he always included new voices, young people, in his education process, in his readings, and setting up readings for young people. He would show up at the readings. He made sure that they shared the spotlight.
That was great, because setting up a reading can be very nerve-wracking, because you're always wondering, first of all, is anyone going to show up?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Nothing like reading
Been
to
there,
yourself.
done that.
So that's always a point of, ooh. But Michael, I think, was really good at helping to calm those fears. And, as we always say, even if only one person showed up, that was the person you're supposed to be speaking to.
Absolutely.
Great.
Well, Chris, we really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to talk about Michael Castro and your friendship with him and what he's meant to you and to our St. Louis area. We appreciate the time today, Chris.
Thank you very much.
America, We Need to Talk. It's a celebration of works by three poets, Maya Angelou, Langston Hughes, and Michael Castro.
Wow. Now that's big.
And here's that poem, We Need to Talk. I am more than your idea. I am tangible, touchable, a human being like you. We breathe the same air, want the same things. We need to talk. I am more than my skin tone, more than the weight I bear, more than the clothes I wear, more even than my hair, more than who I sexually prefer, more than my accented speech. Hear me. We need to talk. So get out of your closed mind. It's claustrophobic in there. Thoughts fester if they can't expand. Let's meet. Get out of your car, onto the street. Let's discover each other on common ground. We need to talk. I say, take off your armor. Put away your gun. Don't just stare dumbly into your smartphone. Hello? Or as they say in the East, namaste and savati. The God in you honors the God in me. We need to talk.
And that really represents his attitude, because we need to talk is a very direct statement, somewhat almost a confrontational statement without being confrontational, without making someone feel threatened. But he's very right in that, we as people go beyond the things that too often we as people judge others by. Their skin color, what part of town they lived in. Here in St. Louis, what high school did you go to?
Yeah.
All those things that tend to divide really bring us all together.